Alright, welcome to another edition of Open Mic Wrestling Night here on Filling the Void Podcast Network. This is Dave as per usual. Thank you for tuning in. Before we get started on the show today, we'll be talking about some of the greatest heel turns in wrestling history. On the heels of quite possibly the most upsetting heel turn of the century. I'll get more into that later. But also, first we'll be talking about, I guess, this week in wrestling a little bit, talking about how the women's revolution, as it's been called, has made history yet again. All the women... a lot of the women under the WWE umbrella has made history this past week on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. But before I get into that, let me get into the fact that I don't know if you have followed it on any of my social media or anything like that, that Open Mic Wrestling Night is now a part of iHeartRadio. A lot of the network shows are also on iHeartRadio. You won't be searching for, Fill in the Void Podcast Network. It's great with iHeartRadio because you can follow the specific show. So if you want to follow this show, Open Mic Wrestling Night, on your iHeartRadio app, wherever it may be, on your phone, tablet, in the car, you could go search for Open Mic Wrestling Night, hit that follow button, and depends on how you look at the glass, whether it be half empty or half full. You got me to listen talking about wrestling. So, I just want to thank everybody for the support over the last several years. I've been doing this show for a long time. Many co-hosts, a lot of shows on my own. I just want to thank everybody for their support. It's been a journey so far, and not quite done yet. So we're going to keep on rolling with the network, and we're also going to keep rolling with the show, obviously. So let me get into this week. I don't even want to say this week in wrestling, because really there wasn't a lot to talk about on any of the shows, meaning Raw, SmackDown, NXT had the Velveteen Dream, which, I mean, he's over. I love the character, but we'll get into that another time. Maybe a discussion about underrated characters in wrestling. Not necessarily the person, the person and their in-ring abilities, but the gimmicks in which they were bestowed upon. What could have worked, what really didn't work, but somehow it did. That'll be for a future show. But for today, let's get into the women's wrestling. As I had stated a little while ago, women's wrestling under the WWE umbrella, and by that I mean Raw, SmackDown Live, and NXT. They all made history yet again. They all made history yet again by main eventing all three shows. So that's a huge deal for... I mean, I don't even want to say it's a huge deal for the women. I mean, it's a great accomplishment for them. But I want to look at it from the sense of a non-sexist point of view, meaning it's good for wrestling. It's good for wrestling. You're coming up on the women's tournament coming soon, which will be on the WWE Network. You're basically showcasing your women on all three brands and what they can do. And again, if you're looking at the glass half empty, what they can't do. But all three matches were, they were really good. And let me start with the Raw. Now, the Raw main event was a women's gauntlet. The women's gauntlet between Sasha Banks, Bayley, Dana Brooke, who I'm amazed still has a job, Mickie James, Emma, and Nia Jax. It was a dominating performance by Nia Jax, who ultimately lost to Sasha Banks. Which, okay, I get it from the sense of like, alright, maybe she wasn't, at this point she started the match and now she's at the end of the match, how long can she really keep this up? I get it. But where you've been back and forth so much between Sasha and Nia, where Nia's really been on the upper hand for a lot of it. I don't get... Okay. The one major surprise, I think, where a lot of people had the major issue with this match was that not only was it Nia Jax starting off, okay, whatever, that's one thing. But you have Bayley starting out the match at number 2. So you're either figuring Bayley gets eliminated first, and Nia just does a clean sweep through everybody. Or Bayley wins, and, that's one of those situations where you can't really win. Because they're trying to push Nia as this monster woman. She's a big girl. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of her, but she is a big girl. And she, with her size compared to the rest of the women on the Raw roster in particular, she should be able to handle them no problem. But the booking problem in which I feel that they had here we go, I'm one of those fans, is that they booked Bayley first. Like, she's super over with the fans. I didn't get a chance to listen to her interview with Steve Austin. From what I understand, on his podcast, she had stated that right now she's at a really awkward time in her career. And I guess she went into detail with that. And, I'm not so sure. Again, I didn't get to listen to it before I came on. But it is awkward because you're Bailey's pushing probably some of the. She's probably the one woman who's pushing the most merch, next to Becky Lynch, next to Charlotte, and next to Naomi. All SmackDown Live talents. And, I guess Sasha, too. I don't know if she's come out with anything. And Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss is definitely a top merch pusher. I mean, a lot of these women are becoming marketable, which is great. It's becoming further inspirations for young girls everywhere. What they used to show when AJ Lee was still on the show, that she met Lita, and she was on camera, and she was crying because she met Lita. It was her idol. That was kind of like, I don't want to say the awkward stage, but like that in-between stage of women's wrestling, from like the Alundra Blazes and the Leilani Kais to now you're bringing in women like Jacqueline. Sable became a credible wrestler. You had Ivory, who was a credible wrestler. Victoria at one point. Trish, Lita, and then I don't know when she exactly met Lita, but then you get into the Divas title age, which was probably the most embarrassing, humiliating, and this is my opinion, and degrading show of women in the wrestling industry. Because these women were all models, and they didn't give a shit if they wrestled or not. They just wanted, meaning the powers that be, to show tits and ass. Which, to a lot of the young guys out there, alright, that's great. But when you're somebody like me that likes to watch the wrestling part of it, okay, tits and ass are one thing, but can you put together a good match? Can you engage the crowd? Like that's why I refuse to watch the latest Table for Three with Eva Marie, with Eve Torres, Kelly, and I think it was Candice. I don't know. It wasn't Candice. It was somebody else. But there were three women that were part of the problem. And part of the problem where people were like, I want to see change. Those were the women that you see them go on a pay-per-view card or a Raw. That's your piss break. That's the time to get food at the concessions, and that's the time to go buy whatever merchandise is left over, because the lines were too freaking long at the beginning of the day. So, you're going from that to the women being last. The main event on a Raw, which is the flagship show for WWE for God knows how, for so long now. SmackDown Live is the second longest running weekly episodic television show in history, with Raw, of course, being number one. And you have women main event there too, with a second Money in the Bank match, which is stupid. I said it last time. I believe I said it last time, where that wasn't necessary, and the match was good. I'll just say both matches were good. The Gauntlet was really good. It served a purpose. It showed that Nia's a monster. I'm going to retract here for a second because I really think Nia needs to be women's champion at some point. Right now, Alexa Bliss is really over. She's killer on the microphone. She knows how to talk. She wrestles well, and she's marketable, very marketable. And like I had said before, she's pushing a shitload of merch too. Bayley being another one. Not so sure about Nia, but you also got Nia in there, who again, she's much bigger than everybody else. It's a and going back to what I was talking about, this current crop of women's wrestlers, whether it be through the initial revolution of like Charlotte, Bayley, the four horsewomen of Charlotte, Bayley, Becky Lynch, and Sasha, to now you're adding Alexa Bliss to the mix, where since the initial draft, when she got called over from NXT to the main roster, she's been fantastic. Like, she, The Miz, and Strowman are the three most improved since the draft, and they keep going. But I digress. Now we're just talking about the women. But Nia, she